Hey, everybody, welcome to the ACI's ethics webinar. Welcome this morning, welcome this afternoon for you folks in Europe. As we were planning this webinar, we were talking about what are the benefits of the ACI's Code of Ethics, and we really kind of came up with three main buckets. First of all, the ACI's Code of Ethics distinguishes you. Companies that display the ASCDI logo means they abide by our Code of Ethics. So it kind of distinguishes you from companies in the marketplace that don't take that step. The second thing it does is protects you, because if you do business with an ASCDI member, they're covered by the Code of Ethics, which means if something goes wrong with the deal, you could file a complaint with us, and you'll hear more about that in a minute from our counsel, Arthur Fryerman. And the third thing it does is it saves money. A lot when you have ethics problems, a lot of times it has to do with financial issues. Company doesn't pay you, and you can hire a lawyer, you can hire a collection agency, or you can file a complaint with ASCDI. As a member of ASCDI, there's no cost to file a complaint, and as you'll hear in a minute from Todd Bone, there is financial benefit. So let me introduce our chairman, Todd Bone. And Todd, if you could kind of tell us a little bit about your ethics experience.
Yeah, Joe, that's a great point on saving money. So we had an overseas customer that owed us about $60,000. We had worked out a payment plan with them, and then they paid once or twice, and then skipped the payment plan. Didn't respond. So the next, obviously, you start thinking, do I have to sue these people for the money? And when you're looking at suing somebody overseas, it can be very expensive and complicated. So, I decided to instead file an ethics complaint with the ASCDI, even though the company was not a member of ASCDI. And so at that point, Karen reached out to them, Arthur wrote a letter to them. And interestingly enough, we threatened legal action, never went through with it, but they didn't get off their keister in terms of paying us until they thought that, if they didn't pay us, that this ethics violation would get broadcast out to all ASCDI members around the world. And so, in my opinion, there's a couple major benefits of ASCDI. One is meeting additional members that you can do business with. And the second thing is this ethics process, because there is no other association in our industry that has this ethics process and this ability to file an ethics complaint against a company, not only as members, but that are not members, that really has some serious effect. So couldn't say anything more about it. It was fantastic, and if you're not using it as a tool, you should be.
Thanks, Todd. And did Teresa join us? Looks like she didn't get back on. Okay. Yeah, and Teresa had a similar story. Teresa's from a company called Sotel, and similarly, she had a customer that wasn't paying her, filed a complaint with us, and we were able to kind of recapture her money. So the saving money is a big benefit of the ethics process. And now I'm going to introduce Arthur Fryman, who's our legal counsel. Arthur, if you kind of drill down a little bit about how the ethics process works, I would appreciate it.
And I'll be happy to do that. Welcome, everyone. Hi, Jeff. I see you joined us.
I can't. Can I talk? Can you hear me?
You can.
Yes.
Yeah. Hello.
Great to be with you.
The ethics code and procedures, which hopefully you take a look at online on the ASCDI website, is divided essentially into two parts. The first part really is the code itself, outlining for members and others who read it proper behavior in the industry. And the second part is is the procedure, how you file a complaint and what happens. So let's walk through that. The first 5 articles of the code are basic principles of doing business. And I think they really should apply to every industry, but you'll see they're tailored a little bit to our industry. The things that we expect members and others who we do business with to do is to maintain high standards of ethical professional conduct, to regard as confidential information of your customers, your suppliers, treat it confidentially, conduct business in a manner that brings credit to the industry. You know, if one ASCDI member gets a bad name out there, it really transfers to all of us. And that's why it's your responsibility to your fellow members and fellow business people in the industry to maintain those standards. Publicize products and services in a professional manner. We have a lot of stories that can be told about people who don't do that. Joe, maybe you want to give your favorite example?
Sure, sure. Many years ago, we had a member who actually ran an advertisement in one of the printed publications and had a picture of a dented, bent up old IBM system, I believe it was, and then next to it, a brand new one. And the words under the advertisement said, "This is what you get from everybody else, and this is what you get from us." And this guy was, they were an ASCDI member. We contacted them. We asked them, could they please take that ad down? We said, that's disparaging. It's not the way we'd like you to portray our industry. And they did take it down.
To broaden public understanding and enhance confidence in the ITAD industry. So it's really those general rules of doing business that you have to keep in mind. Now we get to Article 6 on the next slide, which really is the meat of the code. And when the first associations in our industry were formed, back then the CDA, the Computer Dealers Association, which was formed in the 70s, I was a little boy, but Joe remembers it. And at that time, everyone was doing business on the phone, and you would talk to someone else selling them some gear, and at some point in the call, the parties would say, "Done deal." And a done deal meant you've agreed on the terms and you're ready to go forward, and you're expected to follow through and complete that deal based on what you said. Fortunately, now there's a lot of writing done back and forth. And I say fortunately because if you have it in writing, it's clearer understanding. Forget about trying to enforce it later. The important thing is that both parties should understand what the deal is, have the principal terms of the deal in there. What is it that you're selling? When are you going to deliver it? How much does it cost? Where does title transfer? When you're selling equipment, is it FOB the port in Europe, or is it FOB the port in the States? Where does title transfer to the purchaser from the seller? And once you have all those terms, and as Karen points out, even if you do it on the phone, you memorialize it later in an email. Okay, here's what we agreed. Because then the other party can look at it and say, wait a second, that's not exactly what I agreed. And in particular, that's important when you're talking about equipment, because you often have, I'm sure all of you have been through situations where someone thought they were getting Model X and instead they got Model Y, and no one paid attention when they had the conversation. You're expected to conclude a transaction in competent and professional manner. And that means delivering the equipment in the condition it's expected to be in. Is it new in the box? Is it refurbished? That's part of what the transaction requires. And finally, to honor an offer that has been accepted as expeditiously as possible. In your agreement, you should understand what the timing is. When do you expect to receive the goods? And where do you expect to receive them at that time? And that's part of the agreement. And depending, in our industry, that's often extremely important for two reasons. One, your customer, your supplier has to deliver it to you in time so you can deliver it to your customer in time. And also because if things drag on, particularly when you're dealing in used equipment, the equipment loses value every day. So closing the deal and delivering on time is critical. Next slide.
I just want to, Arthur, I want to add one thing. A lot of the references that Arthur's giving you has to do with buying and selling and shipping and so forth. But in today's market, there's a lot of ITED services going on, and these code of ethics are also applicable to ITEDs. For example, if you say I'm going to pick up the equipment with my own personnel and you outsource it, where you say I'm going to wipe the drives, according to certain specs, and you don't wipe them according to those specs. Those kind of things would also today be considered a violation of our code of ethics.
Absolutely. Next slide. You are expected to fully disclose limitations of the authority of the people who your customers or suppliers are dealing with. You put a broker out there, send them off to Malta to the broker conference, or put them on the phone, or have them sending emails or texts or messages. They're representing you. And unless you've somehow made it known to the other people, the people on the other side of the transaction, what the limits are on that person's authority, they seem to have and therefore do have full authority to bind your company to a transaction. So I know when I ran a company in the industry, it was always hard to control the brokers. They were out there doing their own business. I used to say the salesmen, they're the tough ones out there to control because they essentially promise things, and then you have to live up to those promises. So you have to be careful if there's some limitation on that to make it clear to your customer or supplier. You should also only be using one name, one entity to do business out there. It's a no-no to set up 2 or 3 companies and use different companies for different bidding situations to try to work the game. You should be one company and out there representing yourself. Now, some companies have an internet presence where they're selling equipment online or doing business online. Even there, they should be identifying themselves as linked to the main company. You should refrain from disparaging others by statement or innuendo, and that's the kind of example that Joe was talking about. And in general, I think, I'm not just giving you the legal or ethical, but just the business point. I always used to say to my salesmen, don't go out there and sell by telling how bad the other guys are. Go out and sell by telling how good you are. And that's really what that's about. You are required as a member or as a subscriber to the ASCDI trading platform, the ETN. You are required, if you are one of those companies, to respond to any complaint that's made under the Code of Ethics. Now, you'll see in a minute that non-members don't have to respond, but if you're a member, you must respond, and if you don't, you could be subject to being expulsion from the association. Go to the next slide, Joe. Just something else that you should keep in mind, that it's not just the examples Joe gave about the promises you might make as an ITAD to do certain things for your customer, but it's also obeying the laws of the land. And the laws that protect patent, copyright, trademark are really protections for the manufacturers. And even though the manufacturers try to use those things sometime to limit our business, we really should be paying attention that we're doing it properly. So you can always say, I'm selling IBM equipment, but you can't take the IBM logo and put it up on your website as if you are IBM or IBM has made you an authorized dealer, unless they have. And if they do, you'd find they have a lot of rules for how you can display their logo. As a trader who is not authorized by them, you can refer to your equipment as IBM equipment, but you can't put their trademark up on your screen as if it's yours.
Another manufacturer infringement that we've seen from time to time is when you're selling a used product and there's a license code on there, the code that specifically licensed the previous user. That software needs to be removed when you resell that product. Otherwise, it would be considered infringement of the manufacturer's rights.
Software is a kind of a slippery slope, and you have to be careful in all situations. There are very few people now trying to sell software, and probably rightfully so, since software can only be licensed by the license holder to a customer or through an authorized.
Although, Arthur, in Europe, there are some countries that are now permitting the resale of some of the software that in the U.S. you cannot resell. So it's country specific a little bit.
Right. Finally, I think obvious to all of us, but everyone should be reminded: do not deal, or as the law says, traffic in counterfeit items. Now, what's counterfeit is sometimes a big question. We've had manufacturers claim things are counterfeit when they're not really counterfeit. They claim it's counterfeit if they're being sold in the gray market, but in the parallel market, as we call it. But if there's any chance it's counterfeit, avoid it. And obviously, if it's stolen equipment, avoid that. ASCDI, when we find out about stolen equipment, when someone lets us know, we put out a message to the members. So you should be careful to pay attention to those messages and not end up on the wrong side of one of those transactions. The anti-counterfeit policy, which appears on the ASCDI website, should be looked at carefully and used as a selling point to tell, when a dealer has a problem from a manufacturer, the first thing I say in my response, if I'm representing them to the manufacturer, is this company is an ASCDI member and they subscribe to the anti-counterfeit policy. And then I give the manufacturer the link to our anti-counterfeit policy, because it really says we watch out for that. We put aside any counterfeit product if we know it's counterfeit.
Quarantine.
We quarantine the counterfeit product, and we check to make sure that the product is authentic, checking it on the outside of the box and checking for appropriate logos and barcodes. That's what you should be doing. And yeah, Joe.
I want to add one thing. Speaking of that anti-counterfeit policy, you all should take a look at that. On that page, there's a policy that you can actually download and include in your company handbook, which is also a good thing. So if ever you're accidentally caught up in dealing with counterfeit equipment, you can show the authorities that, look, this is my company policy, this is my company handbook, and this is what my company subscribes to. So you can download that and put your own company name on it, throw it in your handbook, and it's a really good insurance policy, if you will. Sorry.
Next slide. Now, how does a complaint happen? Well, first of all, who can file an ASCDI ethics complaint? And there's the answer. Practically anyone, or I should say anyone, can file a complaint. Members, non-members, end users, customers, suppliers, anyone can go on the ASCDI website and file an ethics complaint, and it can be against a member, a non-member, a manufacturer, whoever it is that you feel has violated the ethics code. Next slide, Joe. Now, ASCDI members and ASCDI Trading Network, ETN users, must respond to the complaint, or they're likely to be expelled from the association or removed from the trading network. So if you are a member, you're expected to respond if a complaint is filed against you. Next slide. Non-members have the option to reply or not reply. I should say here, our ethics proceeding is not a court of law. We're not subject to the rules of procedure that courts are subject to. But we do try to have some type of due process. And due process essentially means that when you're accused of something, you have the right to step up and reply to that. And if someone doesn't have jurisdiction over you, if they can't drag you into court, or in this case, drag you into the ethics proceeding, then that doesn't automatically mean you're guilty. So what happens if a non-member decides to reply? Well, they come in and they have full due process just like a member. The member might, or even if it's two non-members, the complainant, the one who complains, who has filed the complaint, states their case, and then the respondent, the one who is being complained about, gets to respond and state their case. Non-members have the option to do that. If they don't reply, then what happens? Well, in that case, all we can do is tell people that an ethics complaint was filed against that company. The basic reason for it, an ethics complaint was filed against ABC company because they didn't, for non-payment after a sale of equipment. And then, but they have chosen not to respond, and that doesn't mean they've chosen not to participate in our ethics process, but that doesn't mean that they're automatically guilty. We just want to let you know that this happened. Now, you as a member can read between the lines and be careful about whether or not you want to do business with that company. And that's another benefit you have by taking a look at the list of companies who have responded or who have not responded or who have been found to have violated the code of ethics.
Yeah, and I want to just emphasize that one more time, because we get that a lot, where members contact us and say, I have this problem. Somebody I met on some other trading platform. I did a deal. They're not paying me. What can I do? But they're not ASCDI members. We tell them to file the complaint anyway, and we have a pretty good hit rate on those. About 80% of those do get resolved, because even the non-members don't want their name called out to the ASCDI membership. So if it's a non-member, file the complaint anyway. We have a really good likelihood of solving it for you.
Next slide, Joe. Once first of all, it's easy to file a complaint. It says here about 3 minutes. That's probably right. It's a form on the website, and you just fill out the information: who the complainant is, the company that's filing the complaint, who you're filing it against, and a brief summary of the facts. One paragraph is enough. Sometimes people attach, if it's non-payment, they'll attach an invoice or some type of confirmation of what that is, but none of that is really necessary. It's not the evidentiary load. You don't have months of discovery like you would in a lawsuit. It's simple, and you send that complaint out. Then what happens? Next slide. Once you file that complaint, the ethics chair, Karen McGoy, takes a look at the complaint and figures out if it's an appropriate complaint. Does it state something that if it's true would be an ethics violation? And then she gets that complaint. The first thing she'll do is contact the parties to see if she can get them to settle, to see if she can get it resolved before it actually becomes a formal ethics complaint. And often she's successful. I'd say most of the time she's successful, because then we never even hear about it. Someone will file the complaint. She'll take a look at it and say, wait, let me just give a call to the respondent and see if we can get some movement here. And some of the examples you heard about at the beginning of the call are just those types of situations. Either the formal complaint letter or notice of complaint is never sent because it's settled before then, or as soon as it's sent, the parties come together and come up with a solution. If that doesn't work, then the respondent is asked if they'll participate in a hearing to argue their case. And then, assuming that's the case, the parties will take part in an ethics hearing. The ethics hearing is before a hearing panel, which is made up of 3 members of the ethics committee, which is the board of directors of the ASCDI. And the hearing panel will listen to the presentation from the complainant and from the respondent, and then they get off the call, and the hearing panel convenes and decides if there's a violation of the ethics code or not. Next slide. And here's what they might find, that there's no violation. Goodbye, sorry, complainant, but there's no violation here, and that's the end of it. Or there's a violation, but probably it was both parties' fault. Things were not clear. It wasn't an intentional violation of the ethics code. And so they might say, yes, technically there's a violation, but we're just telling the 2 of you because it doesn't rise to the level of notice to the membership. A level 2 violation, a level 2 finding requires a notice to the membership of ASCDI, and that goes out in the form of an email, but it also goes into the permanent record on the ASCDI website. A level 3 violation is notice to the membership and suspension, and level 4 is notice to the membership and expulsion from the ASCDI and the trading network. Sometimes if it's a level 2, a finding of a violation, and the violation is non-payment of money that's owed, then the respondent has an opportunity to cure that within 30 days. If they make the payment and the complainant is satisfied, then the violation doesn't go any further than that. But if they don't pay, then it can become a level 3 or level 4 violation based on what the hearing panel decides. Next slide. If you're expelled from the association, or if a member is expelled from the association or thrown off the ETN, the trading platform, then that's a permanent punishment. They are off, although there's a possibility of coming back and having the president of the association or the board consider letting that company back in if there's some mitigating circumstances that you can find out about later. That's a possibility, but generally speaking, once you're expelled, you're out. You can't come to ASCDI functions. You can't take advantage of the membership benefits. And those sanctions apply not only to the company, but the principals or key people who may have been involved in the ethics violation. So if it's a trader or some other person in the company who really was responsible for the ethics violation, those people's names are included in the expulsion, and they can't just go to another company or start another company and come back and say, okay, we want to be members. That's part of the vetting that's done when a company applies to see if the principals were somehow involved in another company where there was an ethics violation and an expulsion. Next slide. Just to keep in mind, if we hear about a company that's not paying its bills, a company that's sort of on the way down, some say in the vortex, that they can't get out anymore. If we see that 2 complaints or more have been filed against the company within a period of time, we let the membership know so that you don't find yourself joining. You don't want to be the 3rd one who has to complain because you're not getting paid. Next slide, Joe.
Arthur, that's it. That's kind of a quick summary of our code of ethics. The code of ethics really is what distinguishes our members from others in the industries. Use it. Use this as a resource. If you get a call from a company and you're not sure who they are, you've never done business with them before, feel free to contact the ASCDI office. We We have a pretty good record of companies that have violated the code of ethics in the past. And if you're an ASCDI member, you display that logo. It really is a badge of honor. It shows that you subscribe, to the highest ethical standards in the industry. It's what makes you different. You should be proud of it. Use it. A couple quick commercials, and then if there are any questions, we'll take them.
Joe, let me just add, on the website, you also will find a tab called Best Practices. And in there are suggestions about vetting your customers and your suppliers. And everyone should have a best practices policy in place for that company. And part of that should be how you check out customers and suppliers. And part of that checking out customers and suppliers should be obvious that you check to see if there have been any ethics violations by them or principals in that company.
Quick commercial. We have an ACI membership meeting December 6th. We're going to be doing things like voting for a new board of directors. We're going to be announcing some new members, some bylaw changes, and any other type business that comes up. That's a membership meeting. You have to be a member of ASCDI to attend and vote. And then in January, we're going to do disposition. This is our fourth, I believe, disposition in a row. It's really, it's become pretty, a standard, very well acclaimed in the industry. It's a worldwide conference. So we do it in several different time zones around the world. And part of the features of disposition is you get to, I call it speed dating. You get to speed network with all the attendees. So it's a really good way to network and hear what's going on in the ITAD industry. That's our session this morning on Code of Ethics. I'm going to just shut off the recording, and then we'll take any questions that anybody might want to have. Karen or Gail, can you pause that? Because I guess my recording button is not working. Thanks. Any questions? Go ahead. Good. I like
my kind of questions, Joe.
Yeah, and I'm glad Jeff's on this one because Jeff's helped us over the years kind of improve the ethics process. I haven't always agreed, but we've done things like in the past we used to announce that somebody was violating the code of ethics. Jeff kind of forced us into letting more details out when a complaint is filed. So that's one of Jeff's contributions, if you will, to the ethics process. Jeff, thanks for that.
Another important change we made over the years was to have the board of directors by themselves decide to file an ethics complaint. In the past, we waited until somebody filed an ethics complaint against the company. But now if we look in the news, online, not the fake news, the real news, and see that somebody has done something, they're being arrested for trading in counterfeit goods, and that's true, not just that someone accused them, then shouldn't we do something about that? Well, now the board of directors can say, let's open an ethics proceeding concerning that company.
Yeah. Andreas, you were trying to say something.
Yeah, I was just wanted to ask if you have any historical data on how many ethics complaints have been filed. Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it mainly non-payments and in crisis times, or it goes up and down, I suppose, as the markets comes in waves in our industry. But how does it look this year versus last year, maybe?
Okay, Karen, I know I didn't prepare you for that one, but do you handle all the ethics complaints? What's your answer to that one?
Yeah, most of them are about money, and I would say that we have as far as counting them, there's a lot of people that reach out to us before they file an official complaint because they want to see if they can resolve it without going down that road. And a lot of them were successful doing it before it even has to go to that. So probably this year, I would say maybe about 20 situations, and most of them are non-payment. A couple of them were about equipment that was not working or not what it was supposed to be, and we've resolved most of them. We're still, still always trying to resolve them all, but it doesn't always happen. So
Yeah,
We have
I
we have
think
one that's go ahead, Arthur.
in this year, I think where we just uh, initiated, I think it was number 7 or something like that. But even when we do the formal initiation of a complaint, which involves me sending a letter, a notice letter, and a copy of the complaint to the respondent, even when we do that, it usually does not get to a hearing. I would say, Karen, you've had 1 or 2 hearings this year.
not even that. We haven't had to
Not
go to a
even
hearing.
that. So it just never makes it to that because people respect the process and they're concerned about it. They don't want to end up on that list.
We have one that's I have a call. It hasn't been formally filed yet. Might not be data wiping reports. They were promised data wiping reports and they're not getting them. So we're waiting for that one too. And it's funny. It's funny though, Andreas. You hear in that case, one guy saying, "Well, I'm not going to give him the data wiping reports until he pays me." The other one says, "I'm not going to pay him until he gives me the data wiping reports." And we're kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So it's it's the iPad version of the old days, if you will.
Question?
Any other?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Rudolph.
I'm just wondering from what region are most of those problems coming? US, Europe, Latin America, Asia? Any idea?
Um,
I,
there's
Karen, go ahead.
most of them are US, but we have had a couple that are APAC area too. So, and I think one might have been UK. I get at least a couple calls a month about situations or questions about the ethics process. So, so they're worldwide, but most of them I'd say focus in the US.
And Rudolph, that's probably just the nature because most of the members are still, U.S. based. To tell you the truth, a lot of times when we get them from APAC, they're not exactly familiar with the process. That's why we did this exact same session last night or this morning for the APAC folks, trying to educate them on the fact that it's available to them. We had actually 2, I think, in the last 60 days from APAC, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for joining us this morning, this afternoon. We appreciate it. Use us as a resource. You contact us, email me, call us. As I said before, we have a pretty good database of the good guys and the bad guys. So use us. I mean, that's what we're here for. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Safe trading, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.